I'm gonna start from the top. What is commercial fishing? That's my question.
For me?
Yeah.
Catching fish and selling them. What do you think it is? Or barter or trade.
Hey everyone, it's Alana from Harbor House Seafood in Hatters Village on the beautiful Outer Banks of North Carolina. I am here today with you to talk about commercial fishing. There's a lot of misinformation and just misunderstanding about what commercial fishing is. I'm going to explain today what that term means, what we harvest here in the United States and specifically the Atlantic Ocean, and then I'm going to do a part 2 and tell you about commercial fishing just on Hatteras Island in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. So who is in charge of all of our ocean? I'm standing on the Cape Hatteras National Seashore. They're responsible for the beach, the sea shore. But who's responsible for the sea out there? From the beach to 3 miles is under the jurisdiction of the state of North Carolina, Department of Environmental Quality, more specifically, the North Carolina Marine Fisheries Division. 3 miles out to 200 miles is the jurisdiction of the United States federal government. This is called the Exclusive Economic Zone. It's exclusive to the United States of America commercial fishing vessels. This was established because we were having trouble with foreign factory trawlers coming into the United States waters very close to shore and harvesting our fish and taking them back across the ocean to their home. Today, NOAA Fisheries is responsible for the ocean and the management of its resources. It's a big job. As most of you know, over 70% of the Earth's surface is covered with water. So to start, the Atlantic Ocean hosts 2 of the 5 coastal fishery regions of the United States. The other 3 are the West Coast, the Pacific Islands, and the Gulf of Mexico. The Atlantic Ocean here hosts the Mid-Atlantic and New England region, and then the Southeast region, which is what we fish in North Carolina, from the lighthouse to the tip of Florida. The west coast of Florida is included in the Gulf of Mexico region, and from the lighthouse north is considered actually the lighthouse north is only considered the northeast region for a few fisheries. The line doesn't really start until the Virginia border, so Wanchese is considered in the southeast as well. So how do they manage these fisheries? How do they manage the ocean? I'm going to tell you more. I'm back at Harbor House Seafood, about a mile from the beach I was at just now, and we left off with the fishery regions of the United States. So we have those broken down even farther into fishery management councils. We have 8 of them across the country, starting in the north with New England. We have the Mid-Atlantic, the South Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico, the Pacific, the Western Pacific, the Pacific Islands, and the Caribbean. These regional councils were created under the Magnuson-Stevenson's Fisheries Management and Conservation Act of 1976. This is also what created the exclusive economic zone that I just told y'all about. Under the Magnuson-Stevenson Act is where we get the bulk of our regulations, not our regulations, but our guidelines for our regulations. So the Magnuson-Stevenson Act acts as a guide for the Fisheries Regional Councils. And the Fisheries Councils develop fishery management plans, and they decide how much quota is going to be allocated to each region, so that's how much fish we can catch. They are going to decide how much of each fish we can catch. So behind me, I was telling y'all about the South Atlantic snapper grouper complex. Each of the fish have a different quota, or if they're open. A lot of these fish you're not allowed to fish for, like the Warsaw grouper up here. He's been closed my entire life, I believe. The snowy grouper, we can catch 200 pounds of that on every trip, and we share a quota with the entire region. So we fill out our trip tickets and we send them in. So here's a trip ticket. So this is the trip ticket book. So you get the Fishery Management Council, you send them in these fishing reports after every time you go fishing, and then they do the data and they keep track of, and then as a federal dealer, so at Harbor House we're also a federal dealer, and I have that to show you. So here's our federal dealer's permit. So every time we purchase fish, we are filling out a trip ticket form, and we're sending it to the South Atlantic or the Northeast depending, and we are sending it to the state of North Carolina. Okay, so you also have to have federal fisheries permits, and so this poster behind me, the Snapper Grouper South Atlantic Snapper Grouper Complex, this is the permit for that fishery. So if you wanted to start snapper grouper fishing and you wanted to sell your fish to Harbor House, you'd have to go get one of these. Actually, you have to get two of these, because the South Atlantic Fisheries Management Council, our regional fisheries management council, they say bottom fish are overfished in our region. So they came out in the early 2000s with an updated fisheries management plan. And they determined that one of the best ways to manage the fish is to reduce participation. So how are we going to reduce participation? We're not going to give these out anymore. You can't get them from NOAA. If you want to get one of these permits, you have to find a commercial fisherman who has one on his vessel, and you have to buy it from him. But you have to buy two, because our South Atlantic Fisheries Management Council determined that that was a really good way to limit participation. So you have to find two fishermen, and you have to buy both permits, and then you're going to take one of them and you're going to give it back to NOAA. And then you're going to keep the other one. So this one will go on your boat, and this one will go back to NOAA. So when the next person comes along to enter the pool and to get a permit, he's going to have to buy two as well. And they're going to take and retire one and then keep the other. We call that a 2-for-1. And the fisherman who caught the fish, he's filling out his own paperwork in the form of a fishing vessel logbook. And so he gets these in the mail at the start of the year, a nice stack of them. And after every fishing trip, he comes in and he's got 7 days, and you fill out what you caught, what species and how much, where you were fishing, what kind of gear you were using, how many people were on the boat, how many hooks. There's a lot of information. I'm going to include a little overview of that trip ticket form for you guys right here. This is your vessel logbook. And they send you a different one depending on what fish you're catching. So highly migratory species has a different one. And I believe the pelagic longliners have a different one. This is from 2004. This is from my dad. They also send you this, which is a discard logbook. And this is for fish that are either alive or dead that you are not keeping to sell. This logbook is for fish that you are keeping for sell, barter, trade, or personal consumption. So if you're going to keep a fish to take home and feed your family, they still need to know about it so that they can put it towards the quota. So right here in the front of the logbook, they want you to know that the disclosure of this information is mandatory for the purpose of managing the fisheries in accordance with the Fishery Conservation and Management Act of 1976. Failure to report, filing, or false report may result in civil or criminal sanctions. This is fact. Like, they will throw the book, they'll throw the library at you, and every book is going to hit you, and it's going to hurt in the form of tens of thousands of dollars. So these are your instructions for the fishing forms. You have to fill a separate one for each trip that you make. You want to know, your captain has to sign it. You need the vessel ID, the vessel name, trip ticket number. That's the trip ticket that the fish house gives you. And you put it on this trip ticket. And then the days at sea, number of crew, where you're unloading, the dealer name, dealer number. And then your gear section, so depending on what kind of gear you used. And then here's your map. So you have to show them where you caught all the fish. So we're in North Carolina, and we fish off the coast of North Carolina. So you see these locations. It could be in any of these little grid spots. Okay, so this is the trip ticket that they give you at the fish house, and it tells you your name, the license number, the fish dealer number, the number of crew, the trip start date, the trip unload date, what kind of fishing gear, where the water body you were catching. So he was in the ocean greater than 3 miles, remember? That's federal water. And then the ocean 0 to 3 miles, that is state water. And then it go through and you say how much of each fish. I picked this one because he had 4 pounds of cod. I thought that was really interesting. He had a nice selection of groupers, and he was deducted for 10 pounds of shrimp and 50 pounds of squid. And then we would go into our discard book, and then if you had any discards, you would report them here. This is from a trip he made in April 2004, and he had 8 little tunies that he discarded. Each one was about 5 pounds, and he says discard code was a 5, and the reason was a B, so discard code was a 5, so it was kept but not sold, eaten, or used for bait. So little tuna, he probably used it for bait since he was fishing in 35-75. I'm gonna say he used it for some grouper bait. And discard reason was a B, so market conditions. So he probably was going to get like a cent a pound. So 20 cents, or keep them and use them for bait. And another way that NOAA manages the fisheries to maintain the sustainability is they limit our gear types. So for example, when we bottom fish, we have to use a certain kind of hook. We use circle hooks. You're not allowed to use J hooks.
These are circle hooks on a longline vessel, and the reason we use these is because they catch the fish in the hinge of the jaw, whereas J hooks, the fish swallow them and they catch them on their guts, so they risk bleeding out and dying if you don't keep that fish. Studies show fish caught with J hooks are 20 times more likely to die after release than fish caught with circle.
Our pelagic longline vessels have, in addition, everybody has to do the logbooks, but depending on your fishery is how much oversight you have. So the snapper grouper complex is monitored through strict quotas, strict gear types, strict seasons. So we close the season closes in about July, and because of the quota. Other fisheries like are the pelagic longline fishery, so that's who catches our tuna and our mahi and our swordfish. They're monitored, they have to report in even more detail on their trip tickets. So this is the computer that's hooked together to the NOAA observation program. So over here you can see logbook, catch, buoys, sets. So every time you put a hook in the water, NOAA wants to know about it. See? They know where you're at. They know what time it is. See? That's us right now. Okay, so can y'all see this little camera right there? See them? So that turns on whenever the long line spool turns on, and it records every fish that's brought onto the boat, because all the fish are, they come across the stern of the boat, so that's why the camera's pointed there. And there's another camera, you see it right there, and that is in case you decide to pull a fish over the side. Pelagic longlining deserves to have its own video, so we'll go into detail more on that later. Thank you for watching this video touching the surface about commercial fishing and the management in the United States. Stay tuned for more.